get like bombarded with something. We still kind of do, but not really.
Yeah, I remember
It's
the more chill.
It is.
Oh, sorry.
I just like coming in and it's like more quiet and not people rising up.
So yeah, I noticed that like.
So it is
Some days I
9:10,
can sit,
and I'm going to go ahead
but
and get
most of
us
the time I'm
started
like,
for
no,
our next
okay.
speaker. Everybody else will kind of wander back in, I think. So our next speaker is Dr. Lauren DeRoy. She's a board-certified nurse practitioner in both family practice and functional medicine. She focuses on her online practice on IBS, autoimmune disease, gut-brain axis, and prescription reduction. She is the creator and educator for functional medicine and primary care for PESI, a program to be launched later this year. She isn't just rewriting the playbook for healthcare, she's crafting a whole new narrative. Lauren is at the forefront of a movement that's reshaping how we approach wellness. Her approach addresses the root causes of illness rather than symptoms. She is creator of the Passive Client Systems, has spoken on stages across the nation. She is the author of Reading Between the Lines, Anxiety and Depression Treatment. And Dr. DeRoy will be talking to us about the gut-brain axis in preventative and functional medicine today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the introduction. So today we're going to talk about my favorite topic, and it's the gut-brain axis prevention, preventative medicine, and functional medicine. But today I want to start with challenging the way that you think, because honestly, this entire speech is going to be really focused. The hope for the newness of life is not brought forth by the passage of time, but rather the passage of the bias in our minds. Today, I want to speak to the providers who did not become practitioners because it was in fashion, but because you have a passion for saving and changing lives. I want to speak to the providers who your heart breaks when a patient comes to you and they say, something's not right, I don't feel well. But yet, their labs are within our limits, the scans are negative. And even the specialists sometimes don't know what to do, and or the patient doesn't tolerate the medications. I'm speaking to you today not only as a provider, but also as a past patient. I was one of those individuals who had an invisible disease. I had, quite literally at times, debilitating IBS. The associated anxiety from it was very difficult to cope with. And I was scoped up and down, left and right, tested all the time, just to find that everything was normal. But it was far from normal. So today I'm going to take you through some of that path. And we're going to start by looking at some statistics. As we're reading these statistics, I want you to really consider the fact that they're not just numbers. These are people. Even if you're sitting at a table and there's 4 of you there, think about the fact that one person in many of the statistics are affected by what we see. So 26% of adults suffer from a mental disorder. The risk for Alzheimer's by age 45 is now 1 in 5 for women and 1 in 10 for men. Depression affects nearly a tenth of this population, and anxiety affects nearly 20%. Robert Kennedy told us here recently that America spends 5 times our military budget on chronic disease. And what's trending now in America? We have a budget that we're spending 90% of $4.1 trillion on preventable and chronic diseases. 5 of the top 10 leading causes of death in the U.S. are preventable. And 42% have 2 or more, at least 12% have 2 or more chronic diseases, and at least 42% have chronic disease. Looking in children, this is one of the most difficult statistics for a lot of us to see. A few decades ago, autism was 1 in 2,000. Now, yes, The number is higher now, one, because our screening is better, but it's now 1 in 36 that are at least on the spectrum. I would argue, and I think most of us believe, that that's still way too many, even if we're just having better screening. And the risk for other diseases in children is still rising. So at least 40% of school-age American children have at least one chronic health condition. Children. There has been an increase in obesity, we all know that pretty well, about 22% at this point in time, and at least 40% of school-age children report feeling down or depressed, hopeless at some point in time, and 50% of females, over 40% of males, have seriously considered suicidal or have suicidal ideations. You can look at some more statistics here. We're going to move quickly in a lot of these slides. A housekeeping note, this is a big, broad topic, and I try to give you as much information as you can so you can go back through and read these. I won't be able to go through every single one, but I want you to have the information. Obviously, when we're talking about mental health, it is multifactorial. Yes, especially in children. Social media is a big cause of the feelings that these children have. So we don't want to rule out anything. We don't want to dismiss it. We don't want to look at, oh, this is the only way of treating. We want to look from a holistic point of view and really look at everything. But yes, there's several other reasons as well. They're kind of off topic for our discussion today, but we don't want to ignore them. Alzheimer's. There's an increase significant of 117% in the last 26 years. Projected to nearly double, these blow my mind, every 2 years. If Alzheimer's were its own country, it would be the 14th largest economy in the world. So when we start thinking about functional medicine and how we're currently treating in the conventional world, Dr. Mark Hyman, who is MD, is a pioneer in the field. I think you can't have a discussion on functional medicine without at least giving him a quote. Prevention should not just be early detection. We need to think in terms of systems, not symptoms. Now, why do we even bother with this? Nearly 80% of the things that we treat are preventable. We actually have the ability to make that kind of impact. Now, one of the things about functional medicine that pushed me away from it when I first heard about it is all the naysayers towards conventional medicine. And it's like, oh, doctors, nurse practitioners need to be doing this, and food first. And yes, it's true. But the thing is, we all know it's not for every patient. Not every patient is going to be able to do this. This is the path. It's a little bit harder up front. I know from experience, it's a lot more easy for life going forward. So it's not for everyone. The other thing that I want to address, the elephant in the room, is this even evidence-based? Because the first time I heard about it, I don't know about y'all, but I saw all the crazies on social media. Do y'all see them? Like juice cleanse your way to getting rid of cancer, and all these like wild things. What I wanted to say is that no matter what community you're a part of, the medical community, functional community, health, wellness, any of that, it's kind of like families. We all have that like crazy aunt or that crazy uncle that we wish we didn't have to be associated with. But that doesn't mean we throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? There are actually people who have what I call the eagle vision, the eagle view for knowing that there is a better way to do things for those who it's right for them. And in talking about this, I like to give this analogy for a couple of reasons. So the adorably ugly little bird there on your right is a key. It's a flightless bird, and it is on the endangered list. You probably recognize the one on the right, being an eagle. That is one of redemption. The statistics that I shared with you just prior, I will argue, and I think you might agree with me, that those are reflective of a perspective that has us focused towards extinction. And if we want to be a nation that is one of redemption, we have got to change the way that we look at prevention and also root cause. So that eagle being one of redemption, is one that I like to look towards and also like to use as a really interesting example of their story. Now, a lot of people might think that it was because of hunting. When this bird was put on the endangered list, it had not been hunted for about 30 years. The reason why this bird was on the endangered list and got down to just 60 birds total about 60 years ago was because DDT, which is a pesticide that was in the water, was infiltrating their natural habitat. So the mother eagles would drink from their natural reservoirs, they would ingest DDT, they were not able to calcify their eggs. Their eggs did not calcify well, meaning that they did not have viable eggs. So obviously, they became extremely close to becoming extinct. And yet, we allow all the chemicals, and we don't look at this as a real issue. We ingest these chemicals daily, they're marketed to us, they're a part of our natural life. We've actually normalized them, and we see that we have animals that are really, and now I'm also not saying that we take eagles and put those towards people, but it's a good analogy of how much is actually possible. The other thing that I want to address, and why I love using this kiwi, and why I'm so excited to speak to you all today. I've spoken in front of thousands of people, and I'm speaking in front of nurse practitioners, obviously gets me most excited. Because one, you my people, I'm a nurse practitioner, you're a nurse practitioner. But two, you are no stranger to the naysayers. How many here cringe when you heard the term mid-level? You may be the third provider that patient has seen. And yet, you nail the diagnosis, you help that person forward, and yet somehow that care they received was still mid-level. So functional medicine has some naysayers. For some good reasons, for some bad reasons. You're no stranger to that. The last reason I want to talk about why I'm so excited to speak to you all today is you have a natural propensity, just like I did, to thinking, I think there's something we can do a little bit better and a little bit different for some of these patients. You're able to put down your medical ego. You're able to go against the status quo because, been there, done that. And it means that you can help more people as you go. So the last thing that I want to just quickly mention on this is that when we're thinking about naysayers, I want everyone to think about the kiwi and the eagle here. They're both birds. However, they have vastly different points of view of the world. While one flies at 10,000 level feet, the kiwi moves amongst the ground. And what TDG tells us is that we eat at the level of our vision. And I share this with you today because when you get criticism from kiwis, I want you to realize that they're simply reporting from the level that they're on. They may even be right in some ways, but the thing is, they don't know that the way that you decide to treat your patients because the way that they want to be treated is different than the way that it's always been, does not mean that the way it's always been is better. It means that they have a different way of being. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. It's just that it's different. So I share this so you won't be moved by the naysayers when they come to you. Now this is another quote that I think is the eagle point of view. Autism, a brain disorder or disorder that affects the brain. The concept of dementia is obsolete. It combines categorical misclassification with ideologic imprecision. I like to say and think that you fix the body, you fix the brain. Mental illness is the psychological repercussion of a body's eruption. A body's condition manifesting as a condition. Now, of course, yes, can big trauma, big T, little t affect me? Absolutely. But let's also not rule this out. The patients who say, I used to be this way. I don't know why I'm this way. I had a great life. I don't know why. I also like to think about functional medicine as the ultimate leverage of medicine. And you're going to see why when we get some of these case studies. They'll come to you for one thing, and then you'll fix 5 or 6 things that they weren't expecting. It's pretty awesome. All right. We are now entering the reality distortion field of what you once knew about mental health. Germ-free mice. So these mice are in a laboratory, and they have made it to where they have no microbiome. And what they found is that changing the gut microbiome, obviously the microbiome, speaking of the gut, what they found is that whenever they did this to the mice, their mood changed. They started to have higher levels of cortisol. They started to have repetitive behavior that we see in autism. We're going to see that we also see the same trends in these mice as we do in autism spectrum disorder. So they literally were able to take mood transplants, meaning that they took the gut flora of mice that were anxious and put it into healthy ones. What do you think happened to the mice? They became anxious. And then reverse also happened, meaning that the ones that were anxious, when they took that gut flora from the anxious mice and they put it in the healthy ones, they were able to repair. Now slap your neighbor and say, did you hear what you just said? Because that is crazy. Is that not completely different than the way that we're taught? The role of ultra-processed foods. Now, nobody argues that when you eat junk food, you feel bad. We usually recognize that. But look at how significant this is. May of 2024, I think, fantastic. The American Academy of Neurology released a study with over 30,000 patients, or participants, 45 and older. There was a 10% increase in the amount of ultra-processed foods eaten, was associated with 16% increased risk for cognitive decline. That's pretty significant, especially when you think about a lot of the times, many of us, and I was there myself, I felt better. I was doing the 80-20 rule, 80 healthy, 20% was rather junky food, right? Wasn't really getting better. You can see, like, how significant it makes an impact. Whenever they eat, it never discriminated entirely. So Parkinson's disease, another crazy, out of this world thing. They have been able to slow the development of Parkinson's disease by doing vagotomy. So they sever the vagus nerves in mice. And they first inject them with rodin, which is a pesticide known to induce Parkinson's disease. When they do this vagotomy, those mice do not develop Parkinson's at the same rate. It's a much lower rate. What that tells us is, earlier, or later on, is the vagus nerve is the highway between the brain and the gut. So the role of Parkinson's disease is induced by LPS injection. So we're going to have more slides on this, but LPS is lipopolysaccharides. They are endotoxins produced from gram-negative bacteria, E. coli, or and what they found is that just by injecting the LPS, that triggered the substantia nigra and selective loss of dopaminergic neurons, which is associated with, you got it, Parkinson's disease. Autism, because there's so much just crazy information on autism, vaccines, and all that stuff. Really hasn't even shared this with you all today. But the evidence is overwhelming that I have to. They found that prenatal exposure in mice to polysaccharides found to reduce the autistic-like behavior in the offspring. And also, if they corrected the zinc, magnesium, selenium, manganese of the LPS exposure, they actually were able to prevent a lot of the autistic behaviors. So what am I saying here? This is not a cut-and-dry thing. It's very complex. And then intestinal hyperpermeability. Some of you, maybe in the crunchy functional world with me, know that as leaky gut. This is more of the approved term now. Found to be significant and suspected cause. We're going to talk about that one too. So here's some studies that are done. Studies here for fecal medical transplant. So it's exactly what it sounds like. Super fun, right? They're taking a stool of healthy individuals and implanting them into the children. Of course, the gastrointestinal symptoms improved. Now, when I say that in functional medicine, I'm not doing a fecal medical transplant. This is more for our own knowledge and our own base. There are other things that we do as far as correcting the microbiome, but this is just amazing evidence to look at. They found a significant improvement in the abundance of bifidobacteria in their bowl, which is consistent for 8 weeks. You're going to see slides about how that is improving the overall mentality. And 8 autistic children showed greater improvement with their ASD, neurobehavioral symptoms after even 2 years. So they were able to maintain the results they got. This is a little bit off the slide, should have moved forward, but the gut may be the window of understanding Parkinson's disease and developing nutrients, but also autism. Now, on nutrient deficiencies, there's also big evidence for B12, vitamin D, there's several of them. This is a little bit off topic for what we're talking about today, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but I want you to know that you have to have the absorption of the B12, meaning the gut has to be intact. So this is one of the reasons why we see patients take a supplement, they take a, whatever it is, and they don't see an improvement. If your gut is not on point, you're not going to be able to absorb many of the nutrients, and you're also going to have other things working against you. So vitamin D, B12, we'll look at some more things on vitamin coming up. Hopefully I have time. So everybody say inflammation. Yeah, it's a big part of this. We already recognize that in functional medicine, thankfully. But the odds of depression increases 2% for every 1 elevated unit of CRP. Now I am going to say, how many of you have had patients be like, I know this person is autoimmune. I know they have more things going on. And their CRP is normal, their ESR is normal, they have negative rheumatoid factors. So what I'm saying here is, if it is an elevated, that does not mean, that does not rule out that we don't have to look at the gut for it. That doesn't rule out other sources of inflammation. But these are good indications to show us that, I think we're missing a piece of the puzzle. Depression odds double for men if it's greater than 3. And chronic low-grade inflammation may be associated with subcategories of major depressive disorder where they are resistant. So we're starting to think that it's more to do with the inflammation and why they're not responding. About 30% of patients do not respond to SSRIs, SNRIs, any of those. And it's probably because we're not eliminating the inflammation. And we're going to talk about the gut. It's crazy. An increased severity of resistance to treatment. Okay. So this made me very sad. You ever heard about this? Like, I was the girl that was most resistant, probably, of anyone, to taking my breath. I was like, the Lord said, give me my daily bread. I did not want to give up gluten. All right, I'm very resistant to this. We're going to look at a lot of studies on gluten. Schizophrenics have the most, overwhelming evidence for the effects of gluten on the brain. 5-year trial of 14 schizophrenic patients, double-blind, found clinical improvement. I myself have been able to work with some schizophrenics, and they quit cycling. They did not quit, they still had delusions and everything, but they quit cycling where they were going out of control and were putting on a gluten-free diet. So I've seen this in my practice as well. 6 studies showed beneficial effects on another study. So 3 of them didn't have results, but hey, 6 did. That's not bad. Now, this is one of my patients here. I can't see everything, so I'm going to tell you what, from memory on this individual. Okay, so this individual came to me, and I like sharing about her, because she was a methamphetamine user since she was 14. Her parents shot her out for the first time. Terrible story. So there's big T trauma, there's little T trauma, there's everything. She came to me, hadn't been clean for, I think it was a couple of years. She had been dismissed by all the other providers, and rightfully so, given her history, I understand. But she did not want to be on pain medications, but she was in debilitating pain. She's like, I just don't want to go back to methamphetamines. She wanted to be clean. She had been using for so long, and we all know that the post-opiate use, or if they're doing methamphetamines, they tend to have that chronic pain because the receptors, they have more receptors than the average individuals, but the pain's really severe. She had all the markers for fibro. Fibro is another thing that causes pain. Until I started having patients that I was like, I don't know if they're faking it or not, and they get better. Oh wow, cool. She had all the markers like maybe touching on the shoulders and that kind of thing from fibro. So I did a liver cleanse on her. Another thing that I thought just sounded so hoaxy when I first started doing it. I thought, Liver cleanse corrected her gut microbiome. I put her on high-dose probiotics, and then I believe she also has SIBO that I treat. So SIBO is short intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Discussion for another time, but it's a very, very common cause of dysbiosis in the gut. Dysbiosis is the microbiome being off. So just 6 weeks old. Oh, and then gluten-free diet for her as well. And FODMAP. FODMAP is a type of diet as well. I'm sorry, I'll show you information on FODMAP. There's just so much to go through. She told me, "You're my savior. I feel so much better. I have 4 pounds of weight loss." Her scale said 8. So they always want to tell you, right? Like the scale, like their scale tells you more. 8 pound weight loss. She felt happy for the first time. Her pain was bearable. I remember touching her throat and thinking, pain is tender, but this is doable. And her hair wasn't falling out. Her TSH was like through the roof. And so my point here is that this is one of the cases where I thought, I don't think that this is going to touch her. I think that she's going to be so far gone that she's going to have to opiates or something like that, which she didn't want. And she had an incredible story. This is another individual. She was one of them that said, I didn't used to be this way. Like, I had a good life. She has a very supportive, I'm sure still has, a very supportive husband. She said, I don't know why I'm this way. So you can see her lab over here on the left. I'm sorry, you really can't see very clearly. You probably can't computers though. So these are stool analysis. It looks at different markers than our conventional medicine stool analysis will check for. It also looks for dysbiosis, meaning maybe there's even like a commensal bacteria, meaning one that we are supposed to have, but we have too much of, and we need to bring it back down. It looks at that in much more depth. I've actually had patients that came back with negative for E. coli or something like that, and they had an elevated marker on these tests. They're more specific. And then also, sorry, I have to pull something too. So she told me, thank you for being done for us, talking to her and her husband. And she said, thank you for not giving up on me. Like, I remember her coming to me and she had a horrible agoraphobia. She was terrified. She said, I love coming and seeing you, but I'm so afraid to leave the house. So all of this concern, I didn't tell you, and now on the patient before, I was not able to get her off of Lipocelex that she was on, but I was able to get her off of benzos. And how do you know that's a huge thing? Getting people off their benzos, that's next level. So I say all this, and at the same time, what we're treating in intervention is really just looking at the neurotransmitters. So how is all of this possible? One more mindset shift that I want to help you out here, because when I first started functional medicine, I was let me say this, whenever somebody told me, you're not treating at the root cause, and it's probably on social media, I remember kind of scared. Yes, I can. I get rid of the inflammation of a steroid. I get rid of, I'm treating the root cause. But what's causing that inflammation? That's the true root cause. So Henry Ford, you'll probably know that name. Back in the 1800s, there was a manure crisis going on. While everyone else was looking at how to get rid of the extra manure, it was like filling up the towns. People didn't want to stay in the cities. It was quite a big issue. As it grew, there was also more manure. Everyone's trying to figure out how do we clean this up, how do we get rid of the manure. Henry came along, and he built the first car. He got rid of the cause of the manure. So, no one repeat that here. I love horses. I'm not saying we pick up horses or anything like that. I'm going to question myself. But we need to be looking at how do we get rid of what's actually causing what's going on. And you can see here, he had the eagle vision that I talked about. If I asked people what they wanted, they would just said faster horse. The one that doesn't have a motor, right? So this is really just showing you that prescription rates is on the rise, and yet anxiety and depression is also still on the rise. This next diagram is more for, again, like your own review. Everything interacts a little bit. So while we're trying to focus mainly on the gut-brain axis, because that's what you all wanted to hear about, I want you to know that it's not a complete discussion. You really do need to be looking at hormones, you really do need to be looking at nutritional deficiencies and toxic exposure. All of these things have both indirect and direct causes for anxiety, depression, mental disease, and in general. So 2% increase for depression, CRP being elevated because of, everybody say, inflammation. 95% of serotonin is produced in the gut. Some studies say anywhere from 85 to 95, somewhere in there, but many of them say 95%. And then, hit the button too soon. But the last one is kind of an interesting statistic because it says that 39 trillion bacteria, microbiome that you have, and only 30 trillion cells. So your argument is you're arguing more bugs in your body. Yeah, that's great. But it is pretty cool that that's how many microbiome, or how many bugs you have in microbiome. So here's the gut-brain bi-directional connection. Studies actually show that most of the connection, you would think it goes from the brain to the gut, right? 90% is actually etheric. It goes from the gut to the brain. So it's actually the gut telling the brain things. And this gets imbalance of the microbiome, and I already touched on this. Not enough of the good, maybe too much of it that's actually good. We just have commensal bacteria that are not balanced, and it may also be pathologic. Causes of the microbiome being altered, there's a lot. These next few slides are going to have all of the causes, but some of the really interesting ones, and one of them, if you're wanting to implement this with your patients and screen them, you'll want to ask them things such as, do you know if you were breastfed? We know that changes the gut flora. Were you a vaginal delivery? Were you C-section? The children who were born via C-section tend to have gut flora that is more closer to a sterile environment. Obviously, food, antibiotic use make a big difference. Vaccinations. So this is where, I know we're getting kind of controversial, but vaccines do change the gut flora in individuals. But also on that same note, we also know that if somebody has a more diverse, healthy gut flora, they respond to vaccines better. So that is something. Oh, and one thing I want to say on that is, how many of you, raise your hands, do you see patients post-COVID with chronic diarrhea? I see you nodding, right? Do a stool analysis on them, like help them out. COVID is a great example of how we know that viruses and bacteria can change and mess up the gut flora. PPIs, or decrease the acid or stomach acid, is very important for the conversion and protection of those bacteria. You all know that they increase the risk for C. diff, so that's not much of a surprise for you. Antacids, oral contraceptives. This is a little bit controversial because there are studies that say, oh, it doesn't make a difference. All of the studies that I personally found do not go to following people for 5 years. Do not follow women for 5 years. I believe in peer review. I believe in a higher level. That's why we created IFN, Institute for Functional Nursing, because we believe in a higher level and really focusing on only evidence-based peer review studies. With that said, there is going to be bias, and we have to be knowledgeable of that. And most of those studies that said that it doesn't make a difference, that oral contraceptives don't make a difference, didn't follow them for the full 5 years, which is supposed to be about 5 years, and now start affecting the gut microbiome. And hopefully we're going to have time to get to the last slide where I show you directly how the gut flora is affected by estrogen, the vice versa. This is a little bit of the same. Oh, thank you so much. It's a little bit of the same information. However, you can see that gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, affecting mood and behavior. And the dysbiosis can lead to it. We're not going to go through all of these, but these are more for your own information. Several more slides in the full program. But you can see here that these microorganisms have pathophysiological effects, meaning that they secrete 5-HT as a precursor for serotonin. Signals to the CNS, you'll see histamine secretion, or decreasing LPS, IL-6, which are inflammatory. They work on the hippocampus, which is your memory center in your brain. Produce butyrate, that's actually a little bit, you go into butyrate too. But butyrate is helpful and protective for the gut. And then you can see the psychobiotic effects. So that's like kind of neurotransmitter psychobiotic. meaning that these microorganisms affect the gut. You can see secreting, the second one there, secretes GABA. That's our calming neurotransmitter. So you can understand if we don't have enough of that gut flora, that's why I say it's so, I feel like we have a focus in this nation on calories, and it's making us so sick. Food is not just, if it's not enough calories, too much calories, not enough calories, like trying to starve ourselves, finding calories. We need to be thinking about the fact that it's not just, I was really good before, or I've been eating low calorie, and then I'm going to eat this other food. Whenever you eat the food that doesn't have the healthy prebiotics and probiotics that are going to help build up that gut flora, you're not going to be able to produce these things. You're not going to be able to produce those GABA. You're not going to be able to produce the serotonin, the tryptophan. You're not going to be able to absorb them. So here's the trends that we see in Parkinson's on whenever they're taking stool samples from Parkinson's individuals. And they tend to have a decrease in abundance of the good bacteria. And of course, increase in the inflammatory bacteria. These are what we see in autism. And if you look at here, all of the microbiome that is decreased and affects the individuals negatively, or is too much Clostridia as a big one that produces the LPS, we see, maybe coincidentally, I think probably not, that those are exactly reflective of the symptoms we would see with autism spectrum disorder. Now, I want to say that there are, Dr. Greenblatt, another MD, he treats patients this way, and he sees a lot of patients with autism. And it's not just fix the gut flora and everything's better. We usually have to replace vitamins, and there's more to it than just replacing the gut flora. But we know that's a huge part of it that we're ignoring. We already went over some of these studies, but we know that also the big thing about the gut flora in autism spectrum disorder individuals is that they create the gut flora that they have creates more propionic acid. So it's a short chain fatty acid. All of the microbiome breaks down carbohydrates and all of our foods into the short chain fatty acids. Some of them are more irritable to the nervous system, some of them are better. Propionic acid is one that's not as good for the nervous system, especially when it's in abundance. You have to have a little bit of it, but too much is not a good thing. Here's more kind of studies you can go through on success stories that they've had on doing fecal medical transplant. The other thing is really getting rid of Clostridia. Most of them tend to have Clostridia. That's one of the most common causes of the LPS being elevated. And I think this is the same. This is just more of the studies you can also go through. Time-wise, I just don't want to spend too much time reading the studies to you. This is the diagram that is showing you that the inflammation in the gut can go to the brain, cause irritation. The other thing is that whenever we don't have our gut flora, we're not going to produce the neurotransmitters that we need. All right, here's where I'm getting kind of controversial. Here we go. I wish I could speak to these individuals personally. I want to say that first. They have a trademark term, neuroactive microbial metabolites. I've looked at some of their studies. I'm pretty confident. I would like to speak to them to know for sure. But I'm pretty confident that they're talking about LPS, lipopolysaccharides that we know cause inflammation on the brain. They are producing a medication based off the information that I've shared with you all today, the new analysis that we have also, that decreases the effects of LPS. But how many of you remember hearing me say that we can get rid of some of that microbiome that produces that? Like I said, I wish that I could speak to them in person and find out. I've read the studies. That's what I see. I want to ask you today, is that an approach, looking what I'm stinking thinking, or is that more of the eagle vision, or we're getting rid of the root cause? I think that we're kind of just shoving more manure when we could be getting rid of the root cause. With that said, not every patient is going to do well in conventional medicine. They don't respond always. Same happens in functional medicine. So even with that being said, I do see that there may be individuals who are not responsive And in that case, those individuals could possibly be a good fit for that. I believe in integrated medicine. We're not throwing out either baby with bathwater. But we maybe need to be thinking about that a little bit different. So more studies that show you, hey, we know that these bacteria generate neurotransmitters. Yeah, we need that. They're important. Serotonin, the hydroxytryptamine, which is the 5-HT serotonin. So again, inflammation. A lot to talk about inflammation, but the big thing that I want you to know on this is that the cytokines that are produced in inflammation in and of itself decrease our serotonin because they are activating IDO, which breaks down tryptophan. And I'm going to show you a diagram in a little bit why tryptophan is important. And therefore also decreases serotonin and melatonin, both human and mice studies. So this is again a functional medicine lab. First time I ordered one, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, is somebody coming to get it? Is this okay? Because it seems, the first time I started doing these tests and everything, I thought, this is not doing how learned to make conventional training. This is Dr. Green Latt, his protocol that I use. So it's for decreasing clinic acid, which is on the organic acids test, and is associated with inflammation associated with the brain. Okay? So you can see here we're going to treat also vitamin D3, manganese, omega-3s are very important for the brain as well. Curcumin, that's going to decrease inflammation. And that is his protocol. Lipid polysaccharides, if you want to go learn more about this. We do know that they have a direct effect on memory and depression and cognitive decline in general. Low LPS, so this is a cross-sectional analysis of 127 patients without dementia, but they were followed for some time. And once you know, the ones that had lower LPS were found to have less cognitive decline. Those who did have higher amounts or had LPS, they had more rapid cognitive decline. Parkinson's disease, we've really kind of discussed this, but you can go back and look at those studies. Toxic exposure, again, this is not gut analysis, however, I don't want to leave you with an incomplete view of what we look at, because functional medicine, sometimes you can implement one thing for a patient, and you will see improvement, but honestly, sometimes you have to look at the entire gamut in order to see an improvement. Mercury is a big one. Dr. Mark Hyman, I've heard him talk before about having individuals with Alzheimer's remove the fillings. Remember the fillings that used to be silver? And they're high in mercury, and having an improvement in their patients. I've not seen that, I've not actually done that in my practice, but he has seen improvement with that. And we know mercury is a neurotoxic. Vaccinations are a source. I'll tell you what I've done and what I recommend my patients do too. Take it or leave it. If you need or want to do vaccinations, which I think there's always a place for everything in this world, if you want to do vaccinations, at least try to not do the ones that are multiviral, because those don't have a thimerosal. I know the studies say that small amount does not hurt our brains, does not bother us, however, it's neurotoxic. If you can avoid it, why not avoid it? The thimerosal is there, the mercury is there to preserve the vaccination. So if you do the individual vials, they usually don't have a thimerosal. And just pull out the insert, just ask to look at the insert, and look at the ingredients, see if the thimerosal's there. If thimerosal's there, it has mercury. Biochemical toxins and mold. This is another one. I know there's controversy around this. Some studies will say that it doesn't make a difference. I will say that there's a lot of studies to back it up. And also, I've seen it in my practice. So whenever I was still in family practice, running a clinic in rural Oklahoma, I had individuals who were coming to me from a different town. And there's about a dozen of them. They worked in a school that was known to have black mold. Everybody reported, yes, it's there. Some people have reported it, nothing had ever been done. Many of those individuals, all of them had, they didn't have the same symptoms, but they either had severe asthma, they had depression, anxiety, fibromyalgia-like symptoms, and I had 2 children and 2 adults who ended up moving. And they quit going to that school. All of of them had dramatic improvement. That's not a study, I can't say that it's proof, but I can tell you that it was dramatic different. My patient, she had actually moved, and I didn't hear from her. You know, you always like, oh man, I thought that she was like, where'd she go, why'd she not see me? And then I saw her randomly, and how are you doing? She had my neck, I was like, okay, so she still likes me. Don't have those thoughts, you're like, okay, how are you doing? I'm good, I do. And she had my neck, I said, where have you been? Because she was seeing me all the time. She came to my office one time, and she was sick all the time. She sat down, I opened the door, and I was like, oh, you're like, you're here again. And she goes, yeah, I just go around looking at the doorknobs when I come see you. And I was like, girl, we're doing like all these things, and we got a lot of things better, and she's having some improvement, but it still wasn't great. And when I saw her following up, just randomly, I said, how are you doing? She goes, I'm incredible. She's like, my fatigue is gone. She was in the bed all the time. She couldn't do anything. It was affecting her life, her family, her children. It was debilitating for her. And she said, I got out of school, I really think that it was that environment. And the other individuals who had severe asthma and allergies, she still had asthma and allergies, but she didn't have the exacerbations that she did when she finally quit working in school, and her children didn't as well. So again, I'm giving them daily bread. I'll tell you, there's fantastic options now for gluten-free. So I'm now gluten-free, and I recommend most people do it. Now, the thing about gluten that we know is that it is broken down into gliadin morphin. And I'm talking about milk at the same time, so we can save time. Gluten is broken down into gliadin morphin. Milk is casein morphin. Both of them sound like what drugs do you feel like that sounds like? Morphine? It's very chemically similar to morphine. Anyone get a carb high? You can get feel like, oh, this bread is so good. I was that person myself. Well, we don't have enough DPP4. It's an enzyme that breaks that down, that gliadin morphin stays. So just like we see in patients in the hospital, where some patients use morphine and they are tachycardic, freaking out, they're seeing things go off the wall. Some people are like knocked out. It's the same way as gliadin morphin, in that some individuals react differently. Some people say, oh, I had a car crash after I ate carbs. You might be somebody who does not produce enough DPP4. You can take enzymes for it to make it better. Obviously, how much information are you still leaving in your body if you continue to do it? It's also known to increase the intestinal permeability, leading to leaky gut. And it's, unfortunately, it's very chemically changed. So for any of my fellow people out here, I'm going to say, the enemy started in food, if you look back to the very beginning. And history's never changed. Gluten used to be a lot different than what it is now. It has been chemically changed, genetically modified to be completely different. It helped it for cropping and being able to produce more of it. The last one, I'm not sure exactly, but it's been chemically changed for production reasons. And it's not vastly different than what it used to be. So here's some more trials in non-celiac patients. So this is important. Whenever I first heard about this, I was like, that is such hogwash. These people, you don't have this many people that are celiacs. There's no way that gluten is really affecting this many people. It's in even non-celiacs individuals. So you don't have to have celiacs in order to have not enough DPP4. The second one especially is really awesome because it's over 1,100 participants demonstrated that gluten-free diet, gluten diet, G is gluten diet, linked to deterioration of depressive-like symptoms. Sourdough is a better option because as it's fermenting in the beginning, it will break down some of that gluten for you, so you don't have it whenever you're eating it. I myself am testing and trying to figure out how to, because it is expensive. So I'm trying to figure out how to do gluten bread myself. Sourdough, gluten-free sourdough. Here's the testing if you want to do that. Yeah, any kind of food sensitivity testing, to be real with you, it might give you a good idea where to start if somebody's not able to start on a very strict diet, which most people aren't going to get that, truthfully get that. It was really hard for me when I first made these changes. But you can do testing. It's not going to be 100%. It's pretty, these tests have pretty high specificity and sensitivity, but not perfect. And food allergy testing is the same, IgG, IgA. I know there's a lot of controversy with that. Truthfully, the way that you really know is you do elimination tests and try to help your patients. Because there's more than just what we're talking about here, but obviously there's nothing wrong. So root cause for food addiction, this is both cases and working. And one of the ways that I can decrease testing for patients, so they don't have this high bill or anything like that, so I'm like, do you feel really good after you carbs? Does it affect you a certain way? If they do, they're more likely. I've noticed this in my clientele, but also I've seen other practitioners talk about it. I can't remember the physician that I was listening to the other day. He said the same thing. I wish I could give him credit. And I think it's okay, close to kind of where we're at the end here. Chemicals, a little bit off topic, and I'm going to be honest with you. Well, I have you captive. I want to talk about this for a second. Sodium benzoate, there are tons. Like in our full program, there are, I think, like 100 pages of chemicals that we know that affect us poorly, and they're still in the diet. Sodium benzoate affects the brains of mice, people as well. Food coloring, how many of you are already aware of this? I would like to know, how many of you know the effects of food coloring on ADHD? Okay, I figured I see it all. Like, not very many, but I see some hands go, awesome. This is one of the things that actually my patient kind of brought it to my attention. I was in the clinic, my nurse is going to give this patient a soccer, and mom said, no, he has ADHD, and he can't have it, guys. I was like, oh, no, they're okay, they're really good, like, have the healthier suckers, right, they didn't die and all stuff. And my nurse started talking about it later, this was a while back, and she said, or the child said he didn't want the sucker, and I was like, okay, that's cool, it's good for you, kid. And my nurse tells me later, she's like, do you know that kid didn't want the sucker? I was like, no. She says, you're known as the doctor of bad suckers. So, and I don't know myself, but they call me that. And I kind of laughed, but I was like, oh, that's kind of not cool. Like, I didn't know they don't like it. But I was trying, right? I was trying to, like, keep the kids happy, want to see me, but not kill them while I'm doing that. I was kind of looking at it, but I'm not, because the cereal was always a mess. I actually had my child walking in the aisle before, and he said, Mom, completely full more. Because I told him that's the poison. He goes, Mom, poison aisle. And the whole aisle looked at me, and I was like, oh my gosh, so be careful when you teach your kids. You want to be educated at the same time. Maybe you're like a little later on the same, a little embarrassing. So this is a win. Everybody say this is a win. Yes. BDO is now out of our food source as of just July. I was preparing for this presentation. I found it like the day after. I was so excited. I was like, this is what happened. And he's like, that's great, babe. I'm like, no, it's awesome, you know. The problem with that, so, okay, one thing, look at it. It's been used since the 1920s. It started being studied in, I think, the 50s. It was classified as generally recommended as safe for grass foods. Revoked in 1970. It's been going on for half a century. It took them that long to get it out of our diet. How many of you believe that they're going to replace BDO with a healthy chemical? And it took 40 years to get this off the market. They have 2 years to find a different chemical. They are generally recommended as safe. They are innocent until proven guilty. So this is a chemical that is used, I don't remember if I said this or not today, but in citrus grapes. So it's found to be neurotoxic. A lot of us think, oh, Sprite is healthy for kids because it doesn't have caffeine. No. You know, it has BDO in it. And not so much water, but it's a win. It's still a win because there's recognition, there's acknowledgement, there's actually some movement happening. Always looking at it. Okay, we just have a few slides on this. We go really, really fast. BPA, phthalates, plastics, pesticides, they all affect our hormones. You can do sex hormone binding globulin medications and see if these xenoestrogens, so these plastics in our diets that leak into food or chemicals in our body, they change or they attach to estrogen and testosterone to where it's not available in the body. So then we have the same symptoms thereof, even if we have the testosterone and the estrogen. So you want to do a free interval, so you know. I'm just going to go through this really fast. And then on the role of hormones and gut-brain axis. Progesterone could promote the growth of oral bacteria, which are healthy, and then the proteol intermediates. And also candida, so candida overgrowth, utilizes tryptophan from food to produce 5-HT. And bacillus, so bacillus is a good one, that produces dopamine. Estrogen, it's actually estrogen. I don't want to say estrogen, but estrogen promotes activity of serotonin and dopamine in the brain, which encourages emotions and happiness. Talk to a woman who's postmenopause and tell her, estrogen doesn't make me happy. Yeah, it does. I'm missing mine. Estrogen is a collection of microbial bacteria that are capable of metabolizing and modulating reactions involving estrogen. So these actually break down estrogen. You have a direct effect on the gut and also hormones. Nutritional deficiencies, I just have 5 minutes left, so we're going to go super fast here. I see all the time people are like, things are going to make a difference. Well, they aren't going to make a difference if you don't have the right gut. They aren't going to make a difference if you're not doing the right ones. And they're also not going to make a difference if you don't have the other cofactors. But we know through looking at Allegra, it's just an example. I guess how as an example of how serious vitamin deficiency can be. They had inmates that were dying dramatically, 4 Ds, like dermatitis, dementia, diarrhea, and possible probable death. And the cure? More meat and vegetables in the diet. So you can see here, oh gosh. If you look here, so let's say like somebody replaces with like vitamin B6, folic acid, something along those lines. But if they don't have the cofactors to take the 5-HTP, which is the precursor of serotonin, and the serotonin, they're still not going to make more serotonin. And they're still also going to make melatonin. So you have to make sure, that's why we do organic acids test. And that will tell you if the cofactors are low as well, because not just the vitamin that replaces. That's one reason why I tried that, it didn't work. You don't have a complete view of what's going on. Also, if they don't have stomach acid, they're not going to be able to break down amino acids in the tryptophan. It isn't going to happen. Vitamin D is important. I like 3 minutes, we're not going to go too much. I've already told you all this. It's not a copy and paste protocol fits all. It's what can drive some people crazy. It's like, I just want to know what's the first line, what's the second line. What does the patient really want? Like that's really how you have to look at that. Magnesium, vitamin B6, D, there's fantastic studies on that. This is going to be the fastest ever education on MTHFR polymorphism. Anyone here already know about this? The quick and easy on this is that if you aren't able to methylate the folate, if you don't have that gene to methylate folate, you aren't going to be able to take homocysteine and methionine, which is the healthy antioxidant in our body, and the homocysteine is inflammatory. You're also going to have low B12 and have low folate if you're not methylating it. When you do genetic testing, I'll show you what the tests are for that. CC is normal, CT is heterozygous, so they're going to have about a 30% decrease in methylation. TT is homozygous, so they're going to have about 75% decrease. Another thing on that. 2 times the risk of developing depression, OCD, and anxiety. I hope that I didn't fly by too fast and you can see why that's so important. Because you have those cofactors that are needed for producing things like serotonin, those types of things. It's also important in the gut for producing serotonin and dopamine. T is trouble. So the more T, more problem you have. Double T, they have like 70%. So that's why sometimes people come to you and they're like really high B12 levels through the roof, but they're not methylating all of it. They aren't actually absorbing all of it because they don't have, because they may have, right? You don't know, may have genetic polymorphism. Just a clinical drill here. Anyone ever noticed that people are say like I flush from eating certain foods? So they're not breaking down the histamine in their body as much, and they have a higher risk of being MTHFR polymorphism. And no one understands this true, but it's like, what do you say? Nice efficiency. So the way we go about this test on guess, remove the bad, meaning the bad microbiome, pesticides, oxygen stress, all those things, replace the good, the vitamins, vitamin acid, digestive enzymes, re-inoculate, so put that healthy gut bacteria back in there, and then repair the gut. You have some slides here you can review on this. Cleveland Clinic recognizes intestinal permeability, but they don't really have it classified. So it's not ICD-10 yet, but they're kind of figuring out how do we deal with this, how we are moving it to more conventional medicine, that type of deal. But they do recognize it as a thing. They just don't know, is it a standalone disease or is it directly linked to other illnesses and how they're classifying it. If you want information on healing it, this is kind of some protocols here. The biggest thing is glutamine. So glutamate seals your fate, like MSG, bad for you. Glutamine is on the team. Glutamine is good for us. We need that. Somebody has leaky gut, gas, bloating, all those things. Correct their gut. Glutamine health. And then I also have kind of ham and cheese mnemonic for you. Cheese is in there, and then also bread is in there. So following that, I'm sorry, I have 26 seconds. Those are all the things you want to think about. There's like 160 something resources that you can go to that link if you're wanting to. And last but not least, if any of you are interested in this, you're wanting support, here's personal number. I honestly want individuals to be able to implement this how they can. I know there's a lot of complications, or not complications, but it's confusing sometimes when you first start. And you go to visitifn.org and you're wanting to know more about gut brain, you have free resources there too for you and for our board certification. So there you go. I'm so sorry. I'll take your
I feel like she could have talked for like the whole day, had enough stuff to say. So we will be back in about a half an hour, so 10:40. So go.